Good morning, good evening, or good night, friends from around the world. Thank you for joining our first 2021 Global Sales Enablement Society All Hands Call. We're expecting a great number of people joining us live today. In total, we had more than 435 registrations from around the world. And we know a lot of you have been promoting the session through your social media channels. So thank you very much for doing this. We really can't do this without your support. This is an open call. So today we're not just joined by members of the Sales Enablement Society, but also those who are not a member yet. And we definitely hope you all sign up for free membership by the end of the session. As always, this call is being recorded and it will be available through our website, which is sesociety.org. And this is also the place for you to register yourself for your free membership if you would like to be a member. For those of you who are joining for the first time, a very big warm welcome as well. And a quick introduction to the Sales Enablement Society. The Sales Enablement Society is the only not-for-profit global community focused on elevating the role of the sales enablement profession. The society was started in February 2016 when a group of sales enablement enthusiasts met for the first time in Washington, D.C. And today we're a community with more than 8,000 people around the world across more than 59 chapters in roughly 30 countries. So tremendous growth from the moment we started. I will be your host today. My name is Thierry Herwijnen. I live in the Netherlands and I had the opportunity to be involved in the field of sales enablement for the last 10 years at Cisco, Wipro and at Ernst & Young, at EY. And I also had the opportunity to be part of the Sales Enablement Society from the beginning. And I was personally able to witness the impact the SE Society had on the role of elevating the profession of sales enablement, and also the personal impact it had both of my career, but also on many of the other careers of the people who sit here with us today on the call. So that's one of the reasons why I really like to be involved and volunteer in different areas, both as being part of the board of advisors, as well as hosting our all-hand calls going forward. We have developed a great agenda for today. As you can see here on the slide, so we will soon move over to the updates from the executive board with Peter Ostrow and Schlick. After this, we will have a conversation with our first very special guest. I know many of you know him from his work in the field, and also he was one of the key presenters at the last SES conference, Dave Brock. After this, we will move over to a practitioner spotlight session with Bill Ball and Sara D. And after this, we will move over to the SES chapter update with Bryan and Chip. And then I will wrap up with some closing remarks at the end. But for now, let's move over to the executive board update. And let me hand over to Schlick and Peter Ostrow for their update. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Thierry. Peter Ostrow here, and Mo will follow shortly. So welcome everybody to the all hands call. It's great to see the participation. Just kind of as a report from the board, we gathered at the end of last year for the annual strategic planning session. The goal was to make sure that we could leverage ongoing success for everybody in the society, making sure we had a roadmap for increased growth, innovation, more opportunities for engagement for all of you folks who are the membership. So we've got some highlights from where we were, talking about where we are today, and then our priorities moving forward. So some highlights of last year, remembering that we are a nonprofit organization, there are still costs and expenses involved. So the good news is that we finished fiscal 2020 as a society with the strongest year on record. We beat our expectations for Q4. That's really, really important because while we're all networking and most of us have day jobs, this is still a financial entity that needs to thrive and survive in order to continue executing on its mission. Obviously, like all of us, we pivoted because of the pandemic. The virtual conference over 4 days last year brought in over 60 speakers, 400 attendees, and was pretty much a smashing success. On top of that, we got these global all hand calls updated to a quarterly basis for executive board updates, exactly like what you're hearing from me right now, chapter updates, guest practitioners, and other things like what you're seeing on today's agenda. We started the first podcast, which was the Stories from the Trenches piece, the first monthly newsletter, which is the Amplifier. Hopefully you folks have seen that. Developing more and more strategic relationships with industry partners. Administratively, most importantly of anything we're talking about today, we wrapped up our third-party management company relationship, and we hired the first and wonderful executive director, Joanna Velarde. And if she's not a name that you guys have been seeing, you will continue to see that. She is the brains behind today's presentation and event for you, and she is a full-time executive director, our first and most important employee for the society. The membership grew by 15% from the previous year. The board has updated itself. You can see our headshots here, and this is the current sitting board. So where we are today, moving into this year, is Thierry gave you some of these data points. We're at about 8,600 members and growing. The number of chapters around the globe is 59, and that's in 29 countries. It's just remarkable. It's fantastic. Other things that we're working on right now are that we've announced that the official Johns Hopkins University Partnership Program is moving ahead. Mo is taking a wonderful lead on that particular topic, setting up some new processes and tools to support the chapter leaders, create growth in their own communities, and look for as much contribution and support from those chapters as possible. More partner strategic engagements, and we're just starting to plan the in-person, fingers crossed, right, annual conference for September of this year. The official announcement is pending, but I think we've got a little bit of info for that later on in today's discussion. So I'll flip it over to you, Mel.
Thank you, Peter. This is Mo Schlick. I'm really excited to be with you this morning or this evening or afternoon, as the case may be. Really excited to be talking about what's ahead. I know many of you have been with the Sales Enablement Society from the start. Some of you are new, but I want to say, having been here for a while, this coming year should feel like the biggest transformation since we moved up off of LinkedIn and moved on to our own platform. So really, as I go through these list of priorities for 2021, I'm really looking at it, and I hope that you do experience this as a transformation in the way that you interact with the Sales Enablement Society and how you experience your membership. So one of the big things that you're going to see first off is that it's going to look different, feel a little bit different. We are working on a rebrand of the society, and that's going to have a different look and feel. And along with that rebrand, we're going to be bringing a brand new website, which I know that many of you will be excited about. It will be an enhanced user experience for members, and it will give us all sorts of new capabilities with respect to how we deliver content. And so that will be one of the most glaring things that you'll see that'll be different in this transformation. And I mentioned content. Content is going to be really huge this year. You know, as we're looking at the membership experience, we're always looking at ways to enhance that experience. So every time we meet, we're always thinking about our members, right? And how they're going to experience what we're offering that's new. So we're looking at creating a lot of new and original content this year. We mentioned the Johns Hopkins partnership. That's one huge piece of content that we're going to be creating a sales enablement learning along with them. But that's not all. On our website, we're going to have an educational corner, and that's going to be available for practitioners for help and support in various, functional areas within sales enablement that you may be working in. So that's really exciting. Another way you're going to experience this new membership experience is how you interact with the society. We want to create more touch points for regular members to be able to contribute and interact. I think Peter touched on that briefly. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is a sales enablement blog inside of the Sales Enablement Society. And we want that to be practitioner driven. We know that there's a ton of thought leadership and a lot of good work going on out there. There's a lot of successes and triumphs that we're all really proud of. And usually we wait till the conference to share those things. But throughout the year, we want our practitioners to be submitting that, and we're going to be bringing you more information about our blog. Also, we're going to be doing virtual and in-person regional events on a quarterly basis. And so you'll see more of that regular programming going on into the future. Part of our community is also our partners as well. It's not just our practitioners and our members. So we're really going to be looking at how we interact with our partners and being really creative about the ways that they can partner with us. And that's partners of all sizes. We really want to expand the way that our partners contribute to the society in keeping with our values. And finally, we are looking at paid membership tiers. Now, I know that that's been brought up at the chapter. It's been in our last newsletter, and I know there's a lot of curiosity about that. That's not all nailed down yet, but along with all the different kinds of content that we're adding, along with the enhanced user experience, we're going to be looking at sort of levels of membership that people can have to experience some of our premium content. And with that, let's go toward what's in the immediate future. There's some save the dates coming up for Sales Enablement Pro webinar, which will be March 16th. And that webinar is going to reveal the results of the Sales Enablement Benchmark study that was conducted last year. We'll have a Big Tin Can webinar on April 22nd, so save the date on that one. And our next all hands call will be on May 19th. So we'll be doing these quarterly. The annual Sales Enablement Society of Conference, of course, and I think Peter touched on this, we're hoping that it will be in person, and our dates are September 28th through October 1st in Atlanta, Georgia, and more details on that to follow. So I'm going to throw it back to Thierry.
Great, thank you so much, Mo and Peter for that update. With that, if we can go to the next slide, please, Joanne. Let's introduce Dave Brock. Dave, thank you so much for joining.
Oh, Thierry, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really flattered to be in front of such a fantastic group.
Well, Dave, thank you. Thank you for joining, Dave, and we're all very excited to hear your story here, basically. So Dave, you and I know each other pretty well. I think the last time or the first time we met was probably 6-7 years ago when I was still at Wipro. But for those of you who don't know you, you're the CEO at Partners in Excellence, and you also wrote a book or a number of books focused on the sales manager survival guide. And one of the reasons we wanted to invite you, Dave, and have this conversation today was to really give everyone a really good start in 2021, right? Obviously, the world has dramatically changed last year, and while we're kind of like hopefully all moving soon to the next chapter after COVID, and we're all hopefully soon getting our vaccinations done, the world probably will not go back to what it was before, right? So you have the opportunity to talk on a daily basis with sales executives and sales enablement professionals. Is really important to understand what makes them tick and potentially how their world has changed and how the world will change going forward, basically. So and the focus of the conversation we wanted to have today, Dave, is what is it you see in your daily conversations with sales enablement practitioners, and what are some of the trends you see for 2021?
Well, I think I'll reframe the question a little bit, but in something that I think is probably more useful for the conversation is I think the more useful question is, what do we see happening with our customers and in the buying community? And then as a result of those things happening in the buying community, what does it mean for sellers and what does it mean for sales enablement? And I think, I think we've seen some things that a lot of us have been projecting really for a number of years, but I think the pandemic and the economic crisis related to the pandemic has just kind of intensified the need for the changes that our customers are experiencing, and then the things that we need to do to respond to it. And so it's become something, all our lives have changed. I started my morning 2.5 hours ago on a Zoom call, and I continue on Zoom calls through the rest of the day, but it's not all about Zoom. It's about profound changes in our customers' businesses, in about how they buy, how they manage, and how they go forward. And I think as a profession, we need to look at that and say, how do we help them, and how do we become more effective in intersecting them in all their buying channels?
Yeah. So I think it's what you're saying, right, Dave, is, and we're saying that for many years, right? But especially now, right, it's really, really important to understand our customers' business inside out, right? So we really understand how they operate. Any nuances you see around the world there, basically? Is it because you're focused globally? So what are some of the nuances you pick up if you look around the world?
I'm not sure. Well, right now, I think that gets into a longer discussion than we're prepared to have, because the answer is it depends on a whole variety of kinds of things. I think the big change that we're seeing, and I think that impacts salespeople and sales enablement, is again the customer buying journey. If we look at it, and we look at where do customers spend their time learning about potential solutions or learning about changes they should be making, and so on and so forth. And traditionally, going back to when I first started selling, the salesperson was the chief interface to the customer in terms of thinking about running their business differently, thinking about new solutions, getting information about new things that they could do and new solutions, and so on and so forth. If you look at where it's progressed now and where it's progressing, I think at a faster rate because of the pandemic, is the salesperson has probably become the least important channel, at least from a time spent point of view. There's some Gartner research that came out a few years ago, and Peter probably has some similar research that says, total time spent with salespeople by customers in their buying journeys is 17%. So that's with everybody that they're considering. So we as salespeople have a very small part of that time that they invest in us. And so one, we have to maximize the impact of that time they spend with us. Two is, I think, as sales enablement people, we have to look at where are the customers spending their time, where are they learning about solutions, and how do we intercept them with meaningful communications that are consistent with what salespeople are saying.
And what about the moment in time we engage, right? Because I think one of the other statistics is around potentially when clients reach out, they already did a lot of upfront research, right? So what are some of the latest trends you see there in terms of how much did clients already make up their mind before they reach out nowadays?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of data around there, and the data has been progressively, I think, going in the wrong direction. Is that customers are getting salespeople involved later and later in their buying process.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, and the data goes anywhere between, I think, old data that is somewhere like between around 57% of their buying journey, and I've seen some data that says they aren't engaging us until they're 90% through their buying journey. So whatever that data is, it's far later than we as sellers would want. And so you start saying, well, why are they doing that so late? And is that acceptable, or do we need to change that? You also look at that data that says 53% of funded buying cycles end in no decision made. And the reason for that has nothing to do with their ability to select a solution. The reason has to do with their inability to organize themselves and manage their own buying process. Most buying journeys fail before they even get salespeople involved. So you look at that, and that's a huge lost opportunity. Then you overlay on top of that the number of people that should be changing, that should be doing something new, that we as salespeople should be addressing, but they don't recognize they need to do something new. And how do we incite them to reassess their business, particularly in the context of what every business has gone through in the last year? How do we intercept them and say, there's a better way of doing things, there's more effective ways of doing things, and so on. And when I talk to customers, they are just in deep trouble because they're struggling with, what do we do? Where do we go? How do we recover? What does it mean to us? So it's a tremendous opportunity for salespeople, but we can't wait for them to pick up the phone or the email or text us or whatever to say, hey, I'm interested in whatever it is you're selling. Can you come see us? We have to intersect them much, much, much earlier. And again, I think as sales enablement professionals, it's our job to help our salespeople to understand that and to equip them with tools and processes and other things that enable us to go incite customers who are in need of change and struggling with complexity, struggling with dealing with this kind of new reality we have, and looking for direction and going forward. To me, just really crassly, what we face as sales professionals right now is a goldmine of opportunity, and we need to seize it.
And so if we flip that coin, and you just touched on it, right? And we look at this through the eyes of the sales enablement professional, right? And enabling our sales teams, right? And what are some of the tools you see to engage earlier in that conversation and really enabling them to have deep insights on their clients, basically? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's something that I've been talking about for years and years and years, is you got to hang out where your customers are hanging out. When I first started selling, I sold on Wall Street, and I found out the best place to hang out was Harry's at Hanover Square, and because I met a lot of customers drinking beer there, and you'd be amazed at the number of opportunities I identified there. And so what the point is our customers are hanging out in different places, and are we intercepting there? If you look at customers who are in buying journeys, 27% of their time spent in researching online. 18% of their time is in doing research offline. are we hanging out in those places? Are we making ourselves available in those places? And that's not just is the salesperson making themselves available in those places, but are our companies finding out where our customers hanging out, and are we engaging them in the appropriate ways, whether it's through digital channels like our websites and so on and so forth, or groups, or new sites like Clubhouse, and so on and so forth. Where are they hanging out in the offline sites, and how do we intercept them there and start influencing their thinking, and in fact, maybe motivating them to pick up the phone or give us an email before they're 90% through their buying process.
Absolutely. Mark Boundy is making an interesting remark on the chat. Do you really think we spent enough time, Dave, to understand our clients?
No. In fact, I think we spend virtually no time understanding our clients. I look at a lot of kind of the sales initiatives in a lot of the clients I get involved in is we don't understand how to have collaborative conversations. We don't understand business acumen, things like that. We don't understand how to talk in our customers' language. We don't understand the issues they're facing, which are complexity, change, fear of all the stuff that's impacting them. We don't recognize that they are overwhelmed with information. And the surprising part of it is it's fantastic information, so they're confused. And so we don't really put ourselves have the ability to put ourselves in their shoes and see what they face as human beings and as organizations, and how we can best help them with that. And so I think it's an entire new skill set. I think there's some kind of standard things around business acumen. I think there's some things like, probably one of the highest performing sales organizations I've ever been involved with, focuses their training on issues their customers are facing. And what those are is they train people in curiosity. They train people in change management. They train people in critical thinking and in complexity. They train people in how to have collaborative conversations. They train people in orchestration to help people, to help our customers orchestrate their buying process and move forward. So, I think we need to look at what are the problems our customers are facing, and then how do we give our salespeople the skills to be most helpful in solving those problems? And those problems are less about product selection, but that's what we train people on.
Well, thanks, Dave. I think that's a great insight, and maybe I don't know. You need to jump to another webinar soon, but maybe that's where we need to put more focus then from a measurement point of view, right? Are we really enabling our sales teams to have those deep, thoughtful, insightful conversations with the client and enable them to really understand their customers' business? Yeah.
But I think I'd like to maybe leave with one last point that I think sales enablement professionals can be real change agents on. I keep thinking that if we just focus on sales enablement, enabling sales professionals, we're missing out on a huge opportunity in engaging our customers. And whether we as sales enablement professionals look at those things, or whether we provide leadership to marketing, customer experience, product management, business strategy, and so on, and say, our customers are learning about how to change their business and learning about solutions in other places. how do we meet them where they're at, and how do we engage them, whether it's through the salesperson, whether it's through digital channels, whether it's through partners or other kinds of things. I'm not sure that our organizations will reach that state naturally. And I think as sales enablement professionals being change agents, not just focusing on sales, but focusing on our overall organization success, need to provide some leadership in that buying enablement rather than just sales enablement.
Great. Well, Dave, thank you so much for joining us. I know you need to run because you're hosting your next session, a webinar yourself, actually. So thank you so much for taking the time early this morning and being with us. Really appreciate it.
I'm so flattered at your invitation, Thierry, and really appreciate the audience and their patience with me. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much. All right. Thanks, Dave. So let's move to our next section then, which is the practitioner spotlight. And for that, I would like to hand it over to another executive board member of the Sales Enablement Society, Bill Ball, to introduce Sara D. So Bill, over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, all of those different time zone references that everybody was mentioning prior. I think the last thing that Dave mentioned was really interesting and probably an unintentional segue to what Sara's about to speak about. Even though I haven't even seen Sara's presentation yet, I've had the pleasure of seeing her speak at the 2019 Sales Enablement Society conference. She spoke again a little bit last year, and she was part of an incredible transformation of business in response to COVID. So not so much just like, how do we help the sellers, to Dave's point, but how do we help our business? Sara D is, to be more specifically, she's the Global Director of Sales Enablement at Templafy. They're an enterprise SaaS startup based in Denmark, and she's been working in this space for about 15 years. What I know about her is that she's really passionate about creating cultures of learning and coaching within sales. So I'm going to now hand it over to you, Sara, and let everybody follow you on your adventure.
Great, thank you, Bill. So what I thought I'd do is tell you all a story of how one enablement team responded to rapidly changing business situation driven by the pandemic and what I learned from being a part of that journey. This journey actually took place at my previous company, Newzella. I've only been with Templafy about 3 months. I'm having loads of fun with it. But Newzella's in the ed tech space. Their customer base is schools and districts. And this is a story that is probably still relevant now with the pandemic still going on. So if anyone is a parent, you're going to understand that if you have school-aged children, the impact the COVID pandemic had on the education space, because you're probably struggling with distance learning and with your kids. So as a company, we realized pretty quickly there was going to be a big impact on our clients. Schools across the US started shutting down. Educators had to figure out how to teach classes remotely. Most teachers had never taught remote classes, and a lot of schools didn't have the infrastructure or technology to enable remote teaching. And then there were also budget constraints at school districts. And unfortunately, in the US, there's a lack of equity across students, with many students not having home internet or devices they could use for distance learning. And as schools shut down, our sales opportunities pretty much stalled. So as a company, Newzella puts its clients at the center of everything they do. And as a company, we wanted to do something to help our clients and make sure we had a plan to reach our revenue numbers. Which means that a three-month strategy was born. First, we would enable educators with free resources and training on distance learning, helping them feel confident and be able to pivot to distance learning. We would provide our platform for free for a limited time to any school or district that signed up, giving them the tools they needed. And we would convert 80% of free users to paying customers, saving our revenue numbers. To achieve this, we had to bring the entire company together to craft a new offering and messaging, to map the buyer's journey, to identify signals indicating the right time to start a buying conversation, and to measure what we were doing. The biggest impact was to sales and customer success teams. Customer success would need to activate and onboard a large number of clients in a short period of time. The client experience needed to be positive to set them up for a buying conversation later. Sales reps needed to be trained to support onboarding and setting up free users for success. In effect, they had to temporarily become customer success managers. We had to map and train on a new buyer journey from free sign-up to conversion and identify signals indicating free users were ready for a buying conversation. Sales and customer success needed to be able to speak to distance learning, something they'd not done before. And we needed to ensure we were leading with empathy and recognizing where our clients were at. Educators and school administrators were having a really hard time. To get there, we needed to move fast and pull together in the same direction. To do this, we found ourselves organically taking an agile approach based on agile development, something a lot of project engineering teams already leverage. This wasn't a conscious decision, but something upon reflection we realized we'd started doing. This was, however, a new way of working for enablement sales teams. The key was developing solutions and programs in short defined sprints, continually testing, getting input and iterating, which was very different to how we usually worked. We obviously didn't adopt a rigid agile process or use agile process terms. For example, we created what we called a tiger team with a team lead instead of a scrum master, for example, but the concept was the same. We adopted 6 agile principles. We ensured we had active user involvement by including members of the sales team on the tiger team doing the work, and tested messaging and process with actual customers and gathered feedback throughout the process. This was different to how we usually worked, as usually we would conduct needs analysis up front, scope and ensure buy-in from sales managers and get their full input up front, not throughout the process. And we would test and get input from our sales team and our clients after we launched and then iterate. In this case, we had a continuous cycle of input that we designed and built enablement programs. We ensured the Tiger team members were empowered by their managers and their team to make decisions, saving time. We worked in 2-week sprints to get work done and worked in a continuous cycle of development and delivery of content and training. In Agile, timelines don't change, but requirements do. So we embraced change, reflected regularly, and pivoted when needed. This was also very different to how we usually set timelines and determine dependencies in more of a waterfall flow. And we embraced simplicity in everything we did. We had a lot of information to rely and train on, including certifications of sales reps. And so it is imperative that we kept it as simple as possible. This wasn't new, but something that carried over. The results of the strategy and approach, as well as the tenacity and skill of the sales team, really spoke volumes. I can't give numbers as Newzeller is a private company, but as a result of the strategy and its execution, we had the biggest Q2 in company history, hit our 80% conversion goal, and helped thousands of educators. Despite the great results, there were some lessons learned on taking this approach. Overall, it's probably a good approach to take in a crisis when you have clear goals that need to be delivered against quickly, but not a long-term sustainable practice. From a positive outlook, we hit our goals and then some. It really enabled everyone to be pulling in the same direction around a new unified goal. It was great for rapid cross-functional alignment and ownership. However, I personally feel the number of weaknesses when applying this approach to enablement came through as well. Burnout and information overload were a real challenge. Unlike in an engineering team where you have an idea of how much effort each team member needs to put in terms of writing code, developing, and testing, enablement team doesn't work that way. So we couldn't say we need X number of resources doing X number of activities to get to our sprint goal. Instead, we had to say, we have a goal for this sprint. It's all in to achieve it. So we worked crazy hours and then overloaded the sales team with information they were expected to be able to apply. They all did amazingly well, but the pain was real. We also ended up stepping outside of some of our normal processes and communication channels. Quality was sometimes impacted by the need for speed. Going forward, I will probably continue to use 2 of the principles, active user involvement and testing being integrated throughout, as I think they can help build stronger enablement programs. However, I won't be condensing work down into 2-week sprints or working at the speed of lightning every day. Thank you for letting me share my story. I hope it was helpful or at least interesting.
That was a great story, Sarah. Thank you so much for that. Maybe one question before we go over to Bryan and Chip. If you need to mention one thing, what's the thing you're the most proud of?
I think it's the way the entire team, the entire enablement team, the entire company, and the entire sales team really got behind what we were doing. And we weren't just doing it for selfish reasons, hey, we got to hit our revenue numbers, but because as a company, we really did care about our customers and we understood the pain they were experiencing. So it was the fact that we all came together behind one goal to figure out how do we help our client base.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you, Bill, for the introduction. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Bryan and Chip, who lead the engagement with all the chapters globally. As Peter shared, we have like 29 around the world, so we're extremely proud of that. So let's hand it over to Bryan and Chip for their update.
Thanks, Thierry. We are just super excited, both Chip and I, to have the ability to lead the chapters this year again. It's just been an enormous learning experience for both of us. We really, really do enjoy working with all the chapters. Chip's going to go into the next slides, and we have a few here, and we only have a few minutes, so we're going to jump right in. Chip, over to you.
Thierry, Bryan, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for attending today. We really appreciate it. So no, real quick, we just want to thank all our chapter leaders, because without the chapter leaders, out there, none of this we feel would be possible. Again, 59 chapters, 29 countries, 36 of those are in the US and 23 outside of the US. So, that just really speaks to the rapid growth, the increasing engagement, and building that member value. So thank you so much, all you chapter leaders out there, for all your engagement and your just loyal support. We appreciate that.
Next slide. Back one.
And again, that's just what I spoke to real quick, so I jumped ahead real there. So that's just our 59 chapters with our 29 countries. Again, 36 in the US, 23 outside of the US worldwide. So it's been a lot of fun for Bryan and I to get to know all these individuals throughout the world. It really is it's an amazing process, and we can't thank everyone enough.
Next slide. Yeah, and I just want to pass along my thanks as well. This might look familiar to many of you, other than I just noticed we have a slide that's upside down. It wasn't like that when I sent it in. But at any rate, we all got together. We were all excited to jumpstart the year last year with our meetings and the chapters. As Chip mentioned, we can't do it without each of the chapters out there globally. So we started off like this, and we had some wonderful meetings. This happens to be one here that we ran in the Phoenix, Arizona area. But then obviously COVID hit. Next slide, please. And we all started to look like this, right? This should look very familiar to everybody. We're all behind a screen. And I can't, again, also thank our chapters enough for pivoting. We all had to pivot. We all had to kind of figure this thing out. We didn't even have a virtual meeting platform to use. We didn't have Zoom. All of us were doing and utilizing our own tools, just, doing what we had to do to support our local chapters. And again, for that, we can't thank you enough. And we know it wasn't easy, but we know because of the leadership within each of the chapters, as well as the membership within each of those chapters, it was a huge success throughout the year. The feedback we've gotten over the course of the year has just been tremendous. Next slide.
All right, new chapter leaders. So we just want to recognize some new chapter leaders out there who are continuing to grow and support us. So in New York, we have Gregory Scarola and Stephen Goas. So thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate you filling in for our great Mo. So they're doing a great job there. And in DC, we're fortunate enough to have Ashley Butler, and Ashley's been just really proactive. So thanks for all your help, Ashley. Chicago. Wow, Bryan and I just talked to Alex Sakakis the other day. Alex is going to be just a great addition there in the Windy City. So thank you, Alex. Australia, we have Phil Cleary helping out now in Australia. So Phil, if you're on, thank you so much. Boston, Rob Durant's picking up the lead over there. So Rob, thank you, sir. And then in Spain, along with Paco and Alberto, who have just been really taking that country and embracing, bringing it all together from all parts of Spain, they've added Iago Gonzalez to the team. So Iago, thank you so much. And in Denver, Christy Wall, again, very proactive, really like her spirit. So Christy, thank you so much. And again, if I've left, or Bryan and I left anyone out, we apologize, but we just wanted to do a couple highlights right there with some of the new leaders that we have.
So we added a new segment to the all hands meeting, is a chapter spotlight. And what I wanted to do today is highlight one chapter. If there's a chapter in the future that would like to be highlighted, please feel free to reach out to Chip and I. We're more than happy to do that. But without any further ado, I'd like to spotlight the France chapter. A couple of things happening there. Really excited about the leadership we have there and what's happening with the chapter. Next slide, please. They have a couple of events coming up. I just wanted to get it on everybody's radar who is in that part of the world. Please reach out to Laurent. His contact information is there. They have a meeting coming up next month on March 8th with regards to KPIs. They have also their June meeting already planned out. So they have a lot of things happening in the France chapter. So I would highly encourage anybody who's in the area, or quite frankly now, if you're just interested, regardless, with us being virtual, one of the main, if you will, advantages or benefits now that we can take advantage and join other chapters if you're so interested, and maybe if you're not physically in that part of the world but have some business in that part of the world or some responsibility there, you can join and attend their chapter meeting. Next slide. So last but not least here, if there anybody who's out there, if there's not a chapter in your part of the world, that's not a problem. Just reach out to Chip or I, either on the platform, on LinkedIn, whatever's easier there. Our email addresses are there as well. We're more than happy to assist you, provide support to you, what's needed to launch a chapter in your part of the world. So we're excited to help. Lessons learned. We also have a chapter leader call. We do a quarterly call with chapter leaders. We're going to nail down that date. It will be early March, just as a quick heads up. But again, I can't thank you enough. I know Chip wants to say a couple of final words as well, but thanks.
No, Bryan, you hit the nail on the head. So thank you so much. And Bryan and I are always here. And that's the great about doing this as co-leaders, that if one can't get you, the other one will. Usually we both combine and can get right back to our leaders and anyone else out there that really has any questions. And Heather Cold has brought up a great thing in the Q&A about Philly. So, hey, Philadelphia, if you know anyone out there that wants to head up the Philly chapter, just let Bryan or I know. But again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It really does mean the world to us. And have a great rest of the day and a wonderful weekend coming up. Be safe.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Bryan and Chip, and thank you for all your hard work, right? We know you have many calls every week with different chapters and enabling others to join and starting new chapters. So thank you so much for all your hard work there. And that kind of like starts bringing us close to some of our final thoughts, right? So we realize this is an open call. So we also see there are a lot of new people here on the call, and we would love you to become a member and potentially a volunteer as well, right? So if you're not a member yet of the society, go to the address you see there, SESociety.org. That's the place where you can sign up, you can become a member, and maybe if we go to the next slide, Joanne, here's some of the materials you can find there, basically, right? So you can learn more about who we are as a society. You can find some great materials and some great conversations on the member side. But also, if you're not part of a chapter there yet, we would love to welcome you to one of the chapters, basically. So with that, I would like to thank our speakers. A very big thank you to Dave Brock and Sara D for joining us and sharing their journeys and their thoughts. I would like to thank our executive board members and especially Bill, Mo, and Peter for giving us the updates and hosting a section. Bryan and Chip, thank you so much for the chapter update. And I also want to recognize Joanne. Joanne, we're so glad you're on board, and thank you for really helping us to pull this together and making it easy for us. So thank you, Joanne, for doing this. I also want to recognize Michael Labata. I know, Michael, you're listening in, and thank you for starting the all hand calls basically, and we will definitely take them forward. So thank you for all your hard work getting started. And then last but not least, our next call is already scheduled. So if you have your agenda close by, pick up your pen and pencil in May 19th. That's when we will host the next all hands call basically. So I really look forward to seeing you all then. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me either through LinkedIn. I just saw I already got 3 LinkedIn requests while we're presenting here. So looking forward to connecting with you all. Or if you want to drop me an email, and you'd old-fashioned email, then you see my email address here on the screen. So, and we're always looking for great spotlights, for great practitioners, for anyone else who wants to share their story. So if there is anything you would like to share and you want to become part of this all hands call, the next one, drop me an email and let's have a conversation. With that, it's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to the next one.